Mr. Guy from Benton, Arkansas, he said, you haven't given many opinions on the Elite 11 finals, even though you were out there. Who did you like the most? And he's right. We actually did a live show from the field in Los Angeles last Thursday, and I didn't even talk about the Elite 11 finals, which were kind of happening as we were doing the show. Actually, a high school team was practicing as we were doing the literal show, but the finals were later that night. I waited a little while because I wanted to see what all the other recruiting services said about the finals. And I wanted to see what our guys, what Ivan said, what Wiltfong said, Blair and Gulo was out. Like a bunch of our folks were out there. Cooper, and at least I probably left like a bunch of people out. Biggins was out there. So I wanted to read what everyone else said because I had my thoughts. I'll deliver them to you now. So Julian Sayin ended up winning the MVP. Wire to wire, I thought he was probably the best one I saw. That's the Alabama commit. Sat down with us. In fact, all the quarterbacks sat down with us. Wiltfong and I went one-on-one with every one of them. Talked to Julian Sayin a couple of times. Really good kid. Really well put together. Pretty advanced in terms of accuracy especially. Man, that dude could hit a Coke bottle from like a mile away. It is not surprising to me that Alabama got out ahead of things, did a great evaluation here. He's been committed there for a while. I loved what I saw from him. He won the Alpha Dog Award from us. He won the Finals MVP, which he probably wasn't favored to do. But, you know, Jesse, I think I told you off the air, I kind of leaned towards him when I was going out there last week. That was just an opinion. So, you know what? Since my opinion off air panned out, let me proceed to give ourselves a ton of credit on air for that. I liked Julian Sayin. He's a 4-star right now. He's from California. Alabama just recruits California quarterbacks now. That's kind of what they do. We'll see what his rating ends up. A 5th star would not surprise me, but I don't know anything. Let me stress that. I have not sat in on the rankings council. In fact, when I sat next to Ivans and Wiltfong the other day up in the bleachers, they walked down a few rows. Not immediately, but eventually they did. I don't know what they said down there, you know? And, you know, so I tried to get us some dirt. I tried to get us some scoop, and I couldn't get any. So Julian Sayin, I liked him. Dylan Raiola is the number 1 player in the country, number 1 quarterback in the country. He's committed to Georgia. The ball comes out of his hand differently than any player I saw. Some guys have to effort velocity on their throws. If you've ever been around a quarterback, or if you've ever been around a big league pitcher, you've seen what it looks like when guys have what they call easy gas, easy velocity. For some reason, it looks like the ball comes out of their hand twice as fast as it looks like their hand is moving. Dylan Raiola is that. Did he win the MVP? No, he didn't. Did he win the Alpha Dog Award? Did he win all the other awards all the other companies have? Not necessarily. If I had the JP top 10, Dylan Raiola would not be dropping in my rankings. He would not be losing a star in my rankings. He is really good. I saw what the hype was about. He is physically probably developed along the lines of what you would expect a 2nd or 3rd year NFL quarterback to look like. I just mean physically. I'm not talking about his game. He looks like he's about 25 years old, and he is not that. He's still got his senior year in high school to go. So 6'3", 220, he's every bit of that. Skinny ankles. I always check the ankles for you guys. Skinny ankles, big calves though, and that concludes my physical evaluation of Dylan Raiola. Yeah, Georgia had 2 of them out there, and they've started to hit on quarterback, and that's probably not good news for the rest of the SEC. However, that wasn't the favorite quarterback I had out there. The favorite quarterback, the quarterback that I liked the most, was a kid by the name of Will Hammond, who is committed to Texas Tech, and he was not favored by anyone to win the MVP nor the Alpha Dog Award. But you know what? At Pate State, we have our own awards. And so if we want to name the Pate State Freight of the Week, it was Will Hammond. Loved him. First kid I talked to out there, he was probably, when it comes to the wisdom beyond your years department, if there's one kid who talked like he was 45 years old with a family and a reasonable mortgage and 2 cars in the driveway and a dog to take care of, it's Will Hammond. Just sounds like he's lived a life. Sounds like he could seamlessly explain route concepts or how to balance a checkbook. He could seamlessly change a protection at the line of scrimmage, but also, give you some auto purchase advice. He's just that kind of guy. And I love talking to him. He is also physically pretty advanced. Joey McGuire and company out there in Lubbock, they ought to look very, very much forward to the day that guy begins starting games for them at quarterback. Could not say enough good things about Will Hammond. Now, he didn't know this because I am a professional. So when we spoke to him, I kept these feelings to a minimum. But when he was out there on the field, I was talking to Kenny, I was talking to some of our guys out there. I would be lying if I said that we didn't have some friendly wagers riding on the rounds that Will Hammond was taking in his pro day. So, William, you made me a lot of money. I don't know the NIL rules. I don't think I can share any of it with you. See me in 3 or 4 years. But yeah, Will Hammond, Pate State material. Love that kid. Aaron Nolan, left-handed kid, committed to Ohio State. He was the other one, much like Hammond, that when he talked, he just sounded older than he is. He didn't look older than he is. In fact, he looks exactly like an Ohio State quarterback would look physically. But from the neck up, I always love to gauge that about guys. And there were none of them that seemed their age, frankly. They were all pretty advanced mentally. Obviously, they're going to be advanced physically. But Nolan, I didn't get to talk to him a lot on day one, but when we sat down with him on day two, some guys, when you ask them questions, it's like they have a programmed response. They've been coached on how to talk. Nolan's not like that. I'm sure he's been coached, but he's a guy who's really able to articulate his thoughts. He's able to explain things. He kind of thinks and talks like a coach would, honestly, more so than a high school quarterback. And so Ryan Day and that entire offensive staff up there, Corey Dennis, he credited him a lot, friend of the program, Corey Dennis. He's helped us out a time or two behind the scenes. Let me tell you something about Corey Dennis. Corey Dennis is good people. He doesn't look for any credit, and so I won't publicize it for him. There was a viewer of ours not too long ago that was in need, and Corey Dennis came through. So hats off. Love Corey Dennis, quarterback coach up there at Ohio State. And also that entire staff, when they go and they look, they cast their net, and they're recruiting quarterbacks, and they're recruiting offensive skill. They don't take a back seat to anyone. And so when they decide you're their guy, it carries a lot of weight with me. And it's really obvious when you sit down with Aaron Nolan to understand why Ohio State liked him. So those were some of the names. But I got to tell you something. I know that recruiting rankings is always an inexact science. But you can never convince me that quarterbacks in 1997 sound like these dudes do now. It's impossible. I know they're the same age as they were back then. But the quarterback today is exposed to so much more from like 8th or 9th grade on in many of their cases that by the time you get to being a senior in high school, you've done 100 interviews. You have taken so many more physical reps. Also, you've done the 7-on-7 circuit in all likelihood. So you've exposed yourself to more repetition. You have exposed yourself to more of the world outside just your bedroom and your kitchen table and your classroom at high school and your high school football field than you ever could have a generation ago. More eyeballs have been on you, times 100 than ever would have been back in 1997. In 1997, which I'm making sound like ancient times, like you were getting water via aqueduct. No, that's not all that long ago. But in 1997, let's just be real about it. If you were a hardcore recruiting fan, what was it, Forrest Davis? You were looking at Parade magazines. You were getting your information totally different than you would have even 10 years later, much less now. Well, that means that you know more about kids. Scouts know more about kids. Everything you need to know is on the internet, and everything you need to see is on the internet. And so what I'm saying that for is, I'm saying from a scouting and evaluation standpoint, guys are not missing on quarterback evaluations and rankings very much. If you have a bust or you have a kid who's underrated that goes on to shine from this point forward, it's probably either going to be because they physically developed later, or it's going to be because of things outside of an evaluator's control happen. So, if a kid's ranked 5 stars and he goes and mentally he's just not in it in college and gets in trouble and is not in the playbook like he needs to be, well, that's not on a physical evaluator. That's not on Steve Wiltfong or Andrew Ivins to see. I mean, they're judging the player. It's largely a neck down thing, and you can sprinkle in some anecdotal neck up evidence. But by and large, you rank a kid 5 stars and he doesn't pan out, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be because of something non-physical, or if it's physical, it's injury. But the 3-star kid that ends up going on to becoming a first-round NFL draft pick, that probably is going to be because he developed later. Fewer and fewer are going to be the examples of guys who were just overlooked because of how hard it is to be overlooked now. And the other thing I take away from it is because of all that exposure, all these dudes talk like they're 30. All of them. You cannot imagine if you could be around those guys all at the same time like I was this past week, and then you have to remind yourself they're 16, 17, or in some cases 18 years old. It's mind-boggling because you can think back to whatever you were like. I don't care if you're 20 now or you're 80 now. Think back to what your mentality was when you were 17 years old. It's nothing like them. They are nothing like you. They are nothing like I was if I was 17 years old. If you just took a temperature, if you put a thermometer in my brain at 17 and you saw what was bouncing around up there, you saw what I was focused on, what I was most concerned with, what I prioritized, it is not what Dylan Raiola or Julian Sayin are thinking about or prioritizing. That's a credit to parenting, it's a credit to coaching, and it's also a credit in a kind of weird way to the recruiting industry because of the added focus and emphasis that it's placed not only just on high school football players, but then even further on the quarterback position. Camps like Elite 11 have placed that emphasis on the quarterback position to the point where guys have matured. They just mature a whole lot quicker than they do. It's like the Tiger Woods effect, except for everyone. I'm not saying all of them are the Tiger Woods of football, but man, you listen to them talk, those are not kids. Far from it. Oh, also, there's the thing that I got to observe again for the second year in a row, and that is Caleb Williams, who once upon a time was a high school quarterback. He is not anymore. He is the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. He will try and lead USC to the playoffs this year. Caleb Williams does some stuff with a football in his hand I have not seen anyone else do. Last year, we were out there, okay, and he's just messing around in sweatpants. He's standing on the 50. And he's throwing balls and hitting the goalpost, which in and of itself means you're throwing the ball 60 yards, but he's also hitting the goalpost. And he did it twice last year, and I watched it in person. There were no warm-up tries. Let's go 12 or 15 times. When we finally hit it, we'll just use that footage. There wasn't any of that. He did it again this year. I don't know. I'm telling you it's not luck. I'm telling you he's just that good. And then I watch him and Penix. Michael Penix was out there too, quarterback from Washington. When you see developed quarterbacks, when you see guys that have all the precision from all the high-level training built into everything about them mechanically, from the time they take a snap to the time the ball leaves their hand, it's wild. It's crazy to watch how accurate a high-level future first-round caliber quarterback is. Or, of course, if you're around NFL quarterbacks, when you watch them, there is like a car wreck going on around them. But if you ever get them in a controlled setting where they're just throwing against air and they're not worried about getting their head taken off, it's incredible. The accuracy is unbelievable. I wish I could take you guys on the field and let you watch that. The ball whistles when it leaves their hand, and it goes exactly where they want it to every single time inside 50 yards. It's really incredible. So those were my takeaways from Elite 11. I know I was talking about Caleb Williams, man. Michael Penix is a really good-looking player. Michael Penix is a guy at Washington, also a left-hander. Some people thought he may test the NFL draft waters. He's going back to Washington for his senior year. They are loaded at quarterback in the Pac-12. It's going to be a good year out there.